West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
This week, Texas and Florida became the latest states to advance new voting restrictions. This morning, protesters rallied outside the Texas State House in Austin. The State House passed a different version of the Senate bill in the wee hours yesterday. It includes a ban on unsolicited applications to vote by mail. It does not have some of the more controversial provisions like new rules on early voting or a ban on drive-through voting. Lawmakers will figure out the bill in the coming days behind closed doors. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has already signaled that he intends to sign the new restrictions. That is what Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis, did on Thursday. He held a signing ceremony in my hometown of West Palm Beach. The governor said it was a measure to increase transparency, but he blocked local reporters from covering it in person. They had to watch it like everyone else on Fox and Friends.
Right now, I have what we think is the strongest election integrity measures in the country. I'm actually going to sign it right here. It's going to take effect. So, there you go. Bill is signed.
Now, he did not actually sign it right there. A spokesperson for the governor said that he didn't sign the actual bill live on television. That happened later, so the Fox News appearance was ceremonial. Joining us now is Florida Congressman Charlie Crist. He is a Democrat, but he had been Florida's Attorney General and its governor as a Republican. He is currently running as a Democrat to unseat Ron DeSantis next year. Congressman Crist, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Joshua. Great to be with you, my fellow Floridian.
Yeah, and it's weird as a Floridian who covered you as governor to be calling you Congressman Crist instead of Governor Crist. I'm sure you'd like to be called governor again soon, but we'll get to that in just one second. Can you give me your take on this voting bill? Because I don't get it. You know Florida politics as well as I do, if not better. Florida is a very strong Republican political state. Not solidly, but Republicans do very well in Florida. So I don't understand tactically why you would even need a law to change the voting rules for any logical reason, especially if you are a Republican governor. Like, what sense does this make to you?
None. I couldn't agree with you more, Joshua. It really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. They do have the House of Representatives in the Tallahassee, the state Senate, and obviously the governor's mansion at present. But, you know, you have to look at what they're maybe concerned about. Maybe they're concerned that this is going to be a closer election in 2022 because Trump will not be on the ballot as he was last time. That's a factor. And what they're doing with this new bill is not dissimilar to what has happened in Georgia, and it looks like just happened in Texas. They're making it harder to vote. They're suppressing the vote. And one of the most egregious parts of it, from my perspective, is making it harder to use mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots are extremely popular among seniors in Florida. And if you antagonize seniors in Florida, your prospects for re-election are not going to be that good. My 88-year-old father, my 86-year-old mother, love to do mail-in ballots. A lot of seniors, as I said, do. They're making it more difficult to get the mail-in ballot in the Sunshine State.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I really don't know what they're doing. I don't know why they're doing it except to suppress the vote. They're also taking away being able to have drop boxes, primarily in minority parts of the state. That's relatively clear that that's trying to suppress the Democratic vote.
You were campaigning in Miami, I believe it is, earlier today. Democrats have not done particularly well in statewide politics in Florida in the last few years. We haven't had a Democratic governor since the late Lawton Chiles was governor, before Jeb Bush, before you, before Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis. What makes you think that now you can beat Ron DeSantis as a Democrat? I got to say, watching Florida's Democratic political machine versus the Republican political machine, it feels outgunned, not always through any fault of its own, but there are plenty of places where it looks like it can be a liability to run for statewide office in Florida as a Democrat.
Well, I think things are changing. I really do, Joshua. Please don't forget that there still are yet almost 200,000 more registered Democrats in the Sunshine State than Republicans, and a lot of fair-minded independents in our state as well. And that's important. We have a new chairman for the Florida Democratic Party, Manny Diaz, former mayor of Miami, Cuban-American. I think he'll carry a great message for our party across the board for the Senate race, the governor's race, and other statewide races that are up next year. So I'm optimistic. I really think we have an opportunity if we hit the ground early, if we work hard, if we have a great field program, people knock on doors, make the calls, do the kinds of things that are essential to get out the vote, and then have some wonderful Democrats that come in once we have our nominees and campaign with us. Hopefully President Obama, President Biden. It would be wonderful to have them. Vice President Harris, obviously, would be a huge asset to have. I think we have a really good opportunity. And do not forget, Governor DeSantis won his election as governor by only 0.4% of the vote, less than about 30,000 votes. Amazing, really.
What do you think is your winningest issue as a candidate? Clearly, the tone of Florida gubernatorial politics has shifted a lot since you were the governor, since Jeb Bush was the governor. Having covered you both, I can say that you two were very easy to talk to as a member of the press, downright friendly, much more so than Rick Scott or Ron DeSantis were, which is a whole other conversation. But Republican politics in Florida have a few very strong issues, not the least of which being economics, low state income taxes, being friendly to business. That feels kind of like the core of Republican political thought in Florida. What's the core of Democratic political?
If I get elected governor, even as a Democrat, there will not be a state income tax. It's in our Constitution.
Right. But I guess what I'm asking is for you, if the argument comes down to this is the picture of Florida under a Republican governor that Ron DeSantis will put up, what's the picture of Florida under a Democratic governor that you think would win even Republicans over?
Well, look, let's start with Medicaid expansion, for example. That means that about 800,000 people in the Sunshine State aren't getting health care every single day because Governor DeSantis does not support it. I don't think that's a partisan issue at all. I think that's a humane issue. And I think that's something that people can support across the aisle. Because it helps kids get, the kind of health care they deserve. Another issue, a woman's right to choose. The governor does not support it. I do. I think it's fundamentally important to respect others, respect men, respect women, gay, straight, white, black, have equity, do what's fair. And it's fair to let women make their own decisions about their own bodies. The governor is against it. I'm for it. There's other things, you can look at, how people get to vote. I mean, when I was governor of Florida as a Republican, I extended the voting hours in the McCain-Obama race in 2008 because the lines were so long. You probably recall that, Joshua. And what is Governor DeSantis doing? He's closing down democracy. He's making it harder to cast your ballot. That is anti-democracy. It is stunning to me. On each and every one of these issues, I think the Democrats have the advantage. All we have to do is communicate effectively, make sure that the party structure works harder, has a better field program, and that we speak from the heart, that we are genuine about what we're talking about. And if anybody wants to help, they can go to charliecrist.com, because this is something we cannot do alone, but it can be done. I have faith, and I believe we need a Florida for all, right? Not just some.
It is Monday, the 10th of May of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Hey, how was your weekend? Did you have a lovely birthing person's day yesterday? Did you kiss and hug your birthing person? Did you get her? Can I say her? Did you get her a lovely gift? Did you take her to birthing person's brunch? Yikes. You know, some people are able to go to birthing person's brunch because they got vaccinated. I don't think that I would, even at my age. Look, I'm a grandfather. If I called my mom my birthing person, I think she would ground me. Even at my age, even at my grandfather age. Do not call your mom a birthing person. No one does that. You know what? They pay people at Fox News to come up with that stuff. They pay them. God, here I am just making it up for free. Well, kind of for free. Anyway, they actually pay somebody, and that person gets benefits. They get health benefits, too. What's up with that? Yeah, I would hope that in a just world, an entity like Fox News would be, well, forced into bankruptcy. They have no business being in media. I am sorry. Yeah, I said it. Is that a violation of their First Amendment rights? I don't know. Can you yell fire in a crowded theater? Remember when we had those? Not the fires, but the crowded theaters. So, yeah, it's not a First Amendment issue with Fox News. They're entertainment. Okay? They even went to court and said so. You can't believe what Tucker Carlson says. If you can't believe what Tucker says, then I don't think you can believe anything that Fox comes up with. Anything. And I'm looking at you too, Owen. I'm looking at you as well, Newsmax. What's up with Newsmax being able to get, what's her name, Emerald something? She gets to go into the White House press room and ask these inane questions. And then Jen Psaki has to, well, throw a few Psaki bombs. Which actually now that makes me sad when I think of Jen Psaki. Well, you know, good for her. Now, she did say coming in that she was probably only going to be there for about a year. And she did announce that, after this first year, she will be stepping down. Being press secretary is not easy, though she makes it look that way. She's really good. I like her. She's got young kids, and I understand. So, but still sorry to see her go, but let's enjoy her while we still have her, because she's good. Anyway, these weird media outlets like ON and Fox and Newsmax, even the Gateway Pundit. If I was poet, philosopher, king, which I am, I'm just, don't have any power, political power. I would forbid those entities to be able to do what they do. If you want to make some, children's cartoons that have no political inclination to make people into Nazis, you could do that. Married with Children, as much as I hated that show, a lot of people loved it. I didn't. Well, you could still do that under my reign as poet, philosopher, king. But all this lying about COVID, all this lying about, what is really a fascist takeover of our government, just lying about it, they would not be allowed to do so under my regime. Because it wouldn't be a regime. Well, maybe it would be. That's why I'm not poet, philosopher, king with power, because even I am enlightened enough to know. Even I don't want me running the show. As enlightened of a despot as I might be. Representative democracy is the way to go. And that's why the Nazis don't like it. They don't. So, Glenn Greenwald is out there still. Now, I got to say, no, I'm not following Glenn just so I can troll him and all that. Okay? Not just to troll. Okay? But look, Glenn Greenwald is out there. I think maybe even he should be held to account since he's spouting off this disinformation. He's out there this morning going, oh, yeah, well, Democrats never believed that any election was, legitimate that they lost. They blame the Russians here, they blame the Russians there, they blame Diebold and Rove. Hey, Glenn, no Democratic voter anywhere in the history of the United States ever tried to violently take over the United States because we lost an election. No Democrat anywhere, no administration anywhere in the history of the United States has tried to nullify the opposition's election. Only Nazis do that. And when I say Nazis, I'm talking about the GOP. The GQP, you know what I'm talking about, repugs. We just call them Nazis for short, all right? So Glenn Greenwald's out there, I don't know, making excuses for the Nazi takeover of the United States because he wants to kick liberals and Dems and he hates Hillary and all this other BS. Well, even the company that he started kicked him out. That says something, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Now, I have friends writing on Substack. I'm not going to blame Substack for it. Okay? It's just a platform. Substack doesn't have an editor to go through any of these reporters' articles. All right? It's all self-editing. I have some friends writing on Substack, and I hope they make some money off of it. But let's be clear about a Glenn Greenwald. There was something so toxic about him that the company that he started, it was really Glenn Greenwald mostly that got this angel investor money. Not the most liberal investor, by the way, but we already knew that. And but even in that environment, one would think that an environment that Glenn created himself for reporters to be able to report. Even they couldn't stand Glenn Greenwald, and he was forced out. He's got a lot of complaints. Now apparently the Intercept is all a Democratic organ. Really? Would that be a squeeze box? Would that be like a church organ? What kind of organ are you talking about, Glenn? Well, we know what kind. Because it's Glenn Greenwald. Anyway, enough of him. Because we have enough going on in the world, let alone the mass shootings at birthday parties in Colorado. Jeez, let's give everybody a gun. Shoot up a birthday party in a trailer park. Kill 7 people, including the shooter. He was a boyfriend, too. What's up with that? Fortunately, no kids were shot, but they are traumatized for the rest of their lives, unfortunately. And apparently the Second Amendment rights of murderers are much more important than, I don't know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of everybody else. Okay? I keep telling everybody, the person who holds the gun determines what polite conversation is. You think fences make good neighbors? Wait until your neighbor gets a gun. Yeah. Anyway, it was Mother's Day yesterday, and it's my mom's birthday today. Happy birthday, Mom! She's 84 now. Wow. And we did have a bit of a get-together at my sister's house nearby. We are all fully vaccinated, by the way. And, we had like birthdays and Mother's Day celebrations yesterday. May is a tough month in our family. A lot of birthdays in May, and in my immediate family, and also in the extended family as well. And then put Mother's Day into the mix, and yeah, it's a busy month for birthdays and holidays. So, we had a quite lovely time, and today it's on my mom's actual birthday. It'll be a bit more quiet. We are going to have another bash at the weekend here at the mothership. We have a little sort of like park-like property that I've kind of made into a little park. So some of the neighbors are going to come. And, there's another neighbor who's celebrating his birthday as well. So my mom and he are going to be celebrating birthdays this coming weekend outside in our fairly expansive garden park-like area here at the mothership in Rug River. So we'll see how that goes. I'm not one to say we have to wear masks outside. I've been getting into a little tete-a-tete with folks like Glenn Greenwald. Says, follow the science. Yeah, I am following the science, Glenn. First of all, when I'm wearing a mask outside, it's usually when I'm leaving a store and my hands are full. So I'm not taking my mask off while I walk to the car. But I will wear a mask if I'm within close proximity to people, even outside, if they refuse to follow the protocols. And I can tell who's not vaccinated in my little town. How can I tell? They're the ones that openly carry guns, still continue to fly their maggot flags on their trucks, and have never worn a mask since this whole thing began. So yeah, Glenn, I'm following the science, and the science says those people are a danger to yours and everybody's lives, including their own. So I'm wearing a mask around those people. I don't care whether it's outside or not. Oh, do I need to because I've been vaccinated? I won't get their disease? Yeah, I could. It just means I'm not going to die in the hospital. I'm still could get sick, and it would not be fun. Fortunately, I don't have diabetes because apparently there's a black fungus that is being diagnosed in India. They think that it could possibly be from the steroids they're giving folks because that's the only thing that seems to alleviate the terrible effects of COVID. But apparently folks with diabetes are also developing this black fungus, and that's killing them. So they got now they're talking about a pandemic within a pandemic. This is not over, folks. 17 years ago, there was a SARS outbreak in Asia, and they are still wearing masks from that. Are they frightened? Are they scared? Are they not following the science? I think that we need to... Well, even Fauci said masks could be seasonal. I've determined that I'm wearing a mask every time I go into a building. I should also mention before we get into the rundown of our news stories today that we've curated for you, is that there has been an argument that, why aren't stores, why aren't stores being put into this lockdown? The restaurants and bars and stuff in Oregon here, we have another terrible spike. In fact, we lead the nation in percentage of infections now. And that's because of a bunch of right-wing Nazi maggots who decided they don't want to follow. Well, they don't want to be good neighbors. Don't tell them that they're bad neighbors because they'll beat you up. That's how good neighbors they are. So there's been this argument. Well, why aren't stores being put under the same restrictions? Well, mostly when people are in a store, they're moving about. And they're not staying there for very long, whereas people who go to a cafe, bar, restaurant, etc., are sitting for the better part of an hour in one spot, and it may not be ventilated properly. So if they were outside moving about, that's one thing. If you're in a big store or even a small store moving about and not staying for very long, you are decreasing the possibility of getting the virus. So there is that. And that's why stores aren't necessarily put under the same restrictions as cafes and bars. Because at stores, once again, people are moving about and they're not there for very long, generally. Whereas in bars, cafes, and restaurants, people are sitting down for the better part of an hour or more, possibly breathing uncirculated air. So take that to heart. Keep it in mind. Wash your hands. Social distance. Wear a mask. Get the vaccine, all doses. And when boosters become available and you need to take a booster, take it. This will now be part of our lives, and we might as well get used to it. It's okay. All right? We're adaptable. That's how we survive. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, experts warn that private companies contracted for Oregon's post-wildfire logging are taking trees that may never be hazards because they're making money. Oh, I kind of skipped over at the top about Charlie Crist taking the new voter suppression law to task. He doesn't think DeSantis and this law makes any sense whatsoever. None. Thank you, Charlie. Though, I don't know. Well, he's going to be running against DeSantis, and Crist will be running as a Democrat. So let's, I guess we can get on board with that. I just sometimes don't really trust these converts. Okay? But even when Charlie was a Republican, he was a lot more moderate than even the moderate Republicans. So there is that. Okay, on the rest of the menu, of course, those private companies taking trees that they shouldn't be taking in Oregon. Asian American business leaders are launching their largest philanthropic commitment in history behind fighting hate. And critics of the 1619 Project will be mad, but Maryland's governor posthumously pardoned 34 victims of racial lynching dating between 1854 and 1933, saying they were denied legal due process. And that's going to make a lot of racists mad. Lots. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where an Italian judge slain by the Mafia in Sicily has been put on the path to sainthood. And Germany commemorated the icon of Nazi resistance on what would have been Sophie Scholl's 100th birthday. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page is our chat room link. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Link, and thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, off to the left there is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, if you could send those funds to us once a month, we're able to stretch those dollars, pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting as we have been doing for the last decade. It's been 10 years of continuous 24/7, 365 resistance broadcasting, as the founders originally intended, and we have you to thank. Your generosity has allowed us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended, and we thank you for that generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, including Facebook now. We'll see how long it takes before I get suspended again, because it looks like the Nazis are trying to take over again, as if they've ever stopped. But right now I'm on Facebook, so look for the show notes and links diary posted wherever you go on social media, or even on Daily Co's. It is an integral part of this, multimedia operation that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right. Okay, it's Monday, so yeah, what's time? Yeah, what is time? This first offering here comes out of The Oregonian by Ted Sickinger. Tree number 252256 is a 95-foot Douglas fir that stands south of Oregon 22, east of Mahama. One of dozens of trees in this patch of the Santiam Canyon that has been tagged to be cut as part of the state's Troubled Hazard Tree Removal Program. The massive undertaking is slowly creeping westward, leaving swaths of denuded highway and private property in its wake. This particular tree, one of nearly 143,000 that officials estimate needs to be removed statewide, was inspected March 21st, and its removal was approved by a certified arborist from Pennsylvania who is now working in Oregon. Details about the tree come from a mapping database that C.D.R. McGuire, the contractor monitoring the program under a $75 million contract, is maintaining to document the work for reimbursement by the federal government. The data includes pictures of every tree, some basic measurements, and the names of the inspectors and arborists who evaluated it. But there's not much information on the call to cut number 252256. Its condition was poor, and their recommendation was to remove. Yet, the owner of the land and two independent tree experts who toured the forest patch last Monday raised concerns about the tree and others tagged in this tiny portion of the immense project. Light to moderate bark char extends only 15 feet up the trunk of the tree, they said, and the crown, the top branches, look healthy. There is just very light cosmetic damage to the tree, Rick Till, a certified arborist and qualified tree risk assessor from Portland, said after shaving off a bit of the blackened bark with his hatchet. If it did fall, it would fall into the woods. It is a very low-risk tree, yet it's marked for removal, and someone's going to get paid a few $1,000 for cutting down this tree, which should take about 10 minutes' work. Perhaps 100 feet away sits tree number 252300, another Douglas fir tagged the same day by a different certified arborist from Florida. It's clearly dead, probably from before the fire. The top has fallen out. It has significant decay, but it is leaning away from the highway. If it falls, Till said, it too is going into the woods. The risk of this doing anything to the traveling public is minimal, said Till, who until 2016 spent a decade working for a conservation group that is not involved in the current conflict. If they remove it, no big deal. But on the scale of this project, people are getting paid a lot of money to remove this tree. It's not hurting anyone by removing it, but it raises serious concerns in my mind about how they're doing this and inflating the number of trees that need to be removed for private profit. That, in a nutshell, is what's driving the controversy around the state's enormous tree removal and debris cleanup effort stemming from Labor Day's wildfires. The Oregon Department of Transportation says it needs to act with urgency, removing hazards to the traveling public and members of communities ravaged in the wildfires. And it's clear to even the casual observer traveling Oregon 22 between Salem and the Cascade Range that many trees need to go. But former employees on the project, landowners, and local elected officials maintain the program is being mismanaged with rampant overcutting of trees that pose little risk today and may never. This next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays, is out of the Associated Press. Asian American business leaders are launching a foundation to challenge discrimination through what they call the largest philanthropic commitment in history by Asian Americans, geared to support members of their own community. The Asian American Foundation, which announced its launch last Monday, said it has raised $125 million from its board members to support Asian American and Pacific Islander organizations over the next 5 years. The foundation also raised an additional $125 million from individual and corporate donors through its AAPI Giving Challenge. Donors include Care.com founder Sheila Leroy Marcello, Lee Liu, the founder and chairman of the investment firm Himalaya Capital, Joseph Bay, the co-president of the investment firm Kohlberg, Kravis & Roberts, Jerry Yang, the co-founder of Yahoo, Joseph Tsai, the co-founder and executive vice chair of the Chinese technology company Alibaba, and Peng Zhao, the CEO of the financial services firm Citadel Securities. The announcement coincides with Asian American Heritage Month and with the aftermath of the March killings of 8 people, including 6 Asian women in Atlanta, which led to a spike in philanthropic pledges and donations to Asian American groups and causes. The Asian American Foundation says its giving will focus on 3 areas: supporting organizations and leaders who are measuring and challenging violence against Asian American and Pacific Islanders, developing a common data standard that tracks violence and hate incidents, and helping create K through 12 and college curriculums that reflect the history of Asian American and Pacific Islanders as part of the American story. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Maryland's governor on Saturday posthumously pardoned 34 victims of racial lynching in the state dating between 1854 and 1933, saying they were denied legal due process against the allegations they faced. It was the first of its kind pardon by a governor of a U.S. state. Governor Larry Hogan signed the order at an event honoring Howard Cooper, a 15-year-old who was dragged from a jailhouse and hanged from a tree by a mob of white men in 1885 before his attorneys could file an appeal of a rape conviction that an all-white jury reached within minutes. My hope is that this action will at least in some way help to right these horrific wrongs and perhaps bring a measure of peace to the memories of these individuals and to their descendants and loved ones, Hogan said. Hogan and other state officials attended a ceremony in Towson, Maryland, next to the former jailhouse where Cooper was held. A historic marker was unveiled at the site in a partnership with the Baltimore County Coalition of the Maryland Lynching Memorial Project, the Equal Justice Initiative, and Baltimore County. House Speaker Adrian Jones, the state's first black and first female House Speaker, described it as an important day when the governor, Attorney General Brian Frosch, and Baltimore County Executive John Olszewski, all white men, came together to say that this was wrong in order to move forward into the next chapter. Memorializing the site where Howard Cooper was lynched gives us the opportunity to courageously confront the injustices of our past, Jones said. The sign unveiled Saturday said Cooper's body was left hanging from a sycamore tree so angry white residents and local train passengers could see his corpse. Later, pieces of the rope were given away as souvenirs, the sign says. Howard's mother, Henrietta, collected her child's remains and buried him in an unmarked grave in Ruxton. No one was ever held accountable for her son's lynching. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, fight! Full disclosure, I have never played Mortal Kombat. I knew that it was a top-tier arcade console fighting game while I sucked playing Soul Calibur. What I didn't know until now is that it's become a huge beloved franchise with multiple games, a gajillion characters, and a labyrinthine melodramatic plot. Good guys, bad guys, this guy dies and comes back as this other guy, these guys are related, these guys have beef, it's martial arts and magic and cyborgs, whatever. It's all addressing for the combat which needs to happen because regularly, different dimensions offer up their fight champions to determine who gets to rule. In this new Mortal Kombat movie, a franchise reboot coming out of Australia and backed by Warner Brothers, the champions of Evil Outworld have won 9 times in a row. One more time, and the Elder Gods let soul-sucking boss Shang Tsung move on Earthworld like a steamroller. What's clear here is that first-time feature director Simon McQuoid and first-time feature writer Greg Russo, not a Russo brother, are working with a limited budget and the best of intentions. McQuoid eschews CGI for a lot of cool real-life location shooting, giving the film an old-fashioned 80s feel. He also wanted the fights to have different narrative flavors, which they do, and wanted an R rating, which manifests in a lot of cursing that can feel more performative than organic, and in moments where you say, oh hey, that's a lot of blood. Russo's bold step is to introduce Cole Young, an entirely new character not from the games, as our protagonist. Cole is about protecting his family because formulas work and are thus bankable. Indeed, there's very little else that's new here. In fact, the plot is really the Bad News Bears. A plucky band of misfits must believe in each other and in themselves to acquire the mojo to beat the bad guy team, who are the reigning champions and are better funded, better skilled, and all-around jerks. Mortal Kombat ain't fabulous. It tries a little too hard to be masculinist and is even a little toxic, but it's a movie for the fans and for those waiting for the next Fast and Furious to come out. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Hi, and welcome to COVID Quickly, a Scientific American podcast series.
This is your fast track update on the COVID pandemic. We bring you up to speed on the science behind the most urgent questions about the virus and the disease. We demystify the research and help you understand what it really means.
I'm Tanya Lewis.
And I'm Josh Fishman.
And we're Scientific American's senior health editors. Today we're discussing whether human behavior or virus variants led to India's COVID catastrophe.
And we'll talk about ways to make sense of CDC's new mask guidance and what it means when we're coming out of the caves we've been in for the past year.
The COVID situation in India right now is just devastating, with bodies piling up and shortages of critical supplies like oxygen. The big question is, how did things get so bad? Josh, you've been looking at 2 possible culprits. What can you tell us?
The first thing I can say is that people want to blame new virus variants as one of those culprits. But they're wrong. Experts say the problem stems from what people, not variants, have done in India. The country has gone from 100 to 200 deaths per day in the first months of this year to a shocking climb in April and May. About 4,000 people are dying of COVID every day now. And as you say, everyone wants to know why this happened. Many seem eager to blame a new variant. The BBC and other media like calling it the double mutant because that sounds scary and it has 2 mutations. But I'll call it by the last 3 numbers virologists use to name it, 617. Vaughn Cooper, a microbiologist at the University of Pittsburgh who tracks these viral versions, told me 617 is just not a vicious microbe overrunning the country. For instance, it has less ability to evade antibodies than variants that have become dominant in South Africa and Brazil. And it may not even be widespread in India. Cooper says the country does not track these variants very closely. Ravi Gupta, a microbiologist at the University of Cambridge, did a small test on 617. He put the variant into test tubes with antibodies from 9 people who had 1 shot of the Pfizer vaccine. The variant's mutations didn't help it. Antibodies nailed it. Gupta's conclusions: vaccinations work, and this viral version isn't particularly awful. And please stop calling it a double mutant, he says. Most of the variants running around the world now have at least 2 mutations. It's a meaningless term.
That's fair, but what about vaccines? Could those help with the surge at all?
Yes, they could. But here's a real problem. India doesn't have a lot of vaccines. Only about 9% of its people have had 1 shot. In the US, that number is 45%. In Israel, it's 60%. What India does have a lot of, starting in March, was unprotected crowds. There were tens of thousands of people going to pilgrimages and on religious holidays, and going to giant political rallies. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's party ramped up a campaign with huge events and touted that his government beat the virus. Restrictions on gatherings went away. No masks, no physical distancing, in a country with a lot of people. Now there are 400,000 new infections every day. The bottom line is that people crowding together drove this disaster. Variants may play some role. Another variant that spread quickly around the UK and in the US is also in India. But people and politicians lit the fire with big gatherings, and apparently by thinking the virus was not a risk. As these sad events unfold, you may want to donate to help people in India. If you're so moved, we've popped a link into the transcript section of our webpage for this episode, and it lists several organizations that are giving medical aid and food. In the U.S., the CDC recently announced some new guidelines for when vaccinated people can ditch their masks. What do the guidelines say, and how should we interpret them?
The new guidelines state that vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks when they're outside exercising, gathering in small groups outside, or dining outside with friends and family. This is welcome news for many of us. We know the risk of COVID transmission is extremely low outdoors, although not zero. That's because the virus is thought to spread mainly through airborne droplets or aerosols, which quickly become diluted outside. It's like a drop of dye in the ocean, as Lindsay Marr, a Virginia Tech aerosol scientist, puts it. The CDC says unvaccinated or partially vaccinated people should still wear masks when they're gathering with friends or family outside their household. And both vaccinated and unvaccinated people should wear them in crowded settings such as sporting events, parades, or live performances.
All these categories are kind of hard to keep track of, though.
Yeah, the CDC doesn't define what counts as a small group of friends and family because it depends on the context. And it's somewhat hard to remember all the different scenarios for when vaccinated and unvaccinated people can gather and who still needs to wear masks. Still, it's a first step toward a return to some kind of normalcy, but it's going to feel weird for a while. Many people who've been vaccinated, including me, are finding it hard to go barefaced and feel like they're being judged for not wearing a mask. Just a few weeks ago, the same people were judging others for the same behavior. And it's not like we're all wearing t-shirts announcing our vaccination status. Eventually, hopefully, enough people will have gotten vaccinated that we can all feel safe letting our masks and our hair down a little. Now you're up to speed. Thanks for joining us.
Come back in 2 weeks for the next episode of COVID Quickly and check out SciAm.com for updated and in-depth COVID news.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith. and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2005. That was the day United Airlines got the A-OK to ditch its pension obligations in federal bankruptcy court. Workers were dragged through years of employee ownership schemes, massive layoffs and concessions, and the gambling away of hard-earned pensions on the stock market. Then in 2002, United filed bankruptcy. Many asked, how could this happen to an airline owned by its workers? By 2005, creditors like Citigroup and JP Morgan were fully in control. Employee ownership had meant trading billions of dollars in deep wage cuts and givebacks for stock ownership and a couple of seats on the board. Controlling interest meant a 6-year no-strike pledge, the slashing of tens of thousands of jobs, and massive outsourcing. By 2005, the stock was worthless. Then United moved to weasel out of union contracts just 24 hours after the court ruled on the pension default. Some 130,000 pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, and ground service workers found their employee stock ownership plans empty. United executives turned billions of dollars over to the federal government, who then administered what was left through the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. In most cases, those pensions were slashed in half, and monthly retiree health insurance costs exploded by 700%. One pilot stated, "I call it legalized crime. I lost almost all my United stock value in the bankruptcy, and here's another part of the retirement I was promised that is gone." Where does it end? You feel brutalized by the system. Somehow, the $6 million in benefits then CEO Glenn Tilton received wasn't affected by the default. Now that United is swimming in hundreds of millions in profit, many retirees have demanded the restoration of their original pension plans.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 49 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 78 to 80, only topped out yesterday around 71, so a bit warmer today than yesterday. Winds will, a mix of clouds and sun throughout the day. Winds will be out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Overnight lows will be in the mid to upper 40s. Some clouds in the early evening will give way to mainly clear skies overnight, with winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny tomorrow, along with a few afternoon clouds, high around 83 to 85. Winds will then shift out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon, as you know, have not been updated from the weekend. This is the end of Friday total. We now stand at confirmed cases of coronavirus at 10,681, and we have ticked up one more confirmed deceased to 133. We should have the updated weekend totals probably by the middle to the end of the day tomorrow. It would be nice if it was today, but you know how it goes. Grass pollen is rated high here at the mothership in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is very high at 8. Take all needed precautions. Slather on the SP50. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.2 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world, and we all know that affectionately as the Weather Underground. London is 61 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 67 and partly cloudy. Rome is 78 and sunny. Kyiv is 66 and fair. Kabul is 68 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 79 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 68 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 68 and cloudy. And, there's 64 and cloudy. San Francisco is 55 and sunny. And New York is 53 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowd sources from around the world. Francis D'Amelio of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A magistrate slain by mobsters in Sicily and praised by two popes has been beatified by the Roman Catholic Church yesterday, Sunday, in the last formal step before possible sainthood. Rosario Livatino was gunned down on a Sicilian highway outside Agrigento as he drove to work in 1990. 3 years later, during a pilgrimage to Sicily, Pope John Paul II hailed him as a martyr of justice and indirectly of the Christian faith. Livatino was beatified in a ceremony in a cathedral in Agrigento. Hours later, Pope Francis at the Vatican said he worked to judge, not to condemn, but to redeem. As an investigative magistrate, Livatino, age 37, had been leading probes into the Mafia and corruption. When he was slain, he was known for praying daily before entering court. Francis also praised Livatino as a martyr of justice and of the faith, noting that the magistrate always put his work under the protection of God, a reference to Livatino's motto. Describing Livatino as a witness of the gospel until his heroic death, Francis expressed hope that his example would inspire others to be loyal defenders of legality and liberty. Shortly after meeting with Livatino's parents, John Paul II became the first pontiff to publicly decry the Mafia. In improvised marks on May 9th of 1993 and an outdoor mass in the ancient Valley of the Temples, John Paul thundered against mobsters, demanding they repent their murderous ways.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous staff at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. Germany yesterday, Sunday, commemorated what would have been the 100th birthday of Sophie Scholl, a young woman who became an icon for her role in the anti-fascist White Rose Resistance Group. Scholl and other group members were arrested in 1943 after scattering leaflets critical of Hitler's regime and the war from a balcony at the University of Munich. She and her brother Hans refused to apologize or give up their co-conspirators and were executed just 4 days later. The group's story, contrasting the Scholl's siblings' gradual awareness and then rejection of the horrors of nationalist socialist ideology and militarism with that of millions of Germans who supported the Nazis, has become a staple of history lessons in German schools. It also has been regularly dramatized in films, plays, and most recently, an Instagram account. Recent attempts by anti-lockdown protesters to portray Sophie Scholl, who was born on May 9, 1921, as an example of the need to resist government rules on mask wearing and social distancing have been denounced by organizations representing Holocaust survivors, including the International Auschwitz Committee. Joseph Schuster, the head of the German Central Council of Jews, said comparisons between anti-lockdown protesters and the victims of Nazi persecution were repulsive and intolerable. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.